Hi there, this is Vlad from Ausgeknipst, and in this quick video tutorial I'm going to show you how you can use your Canon F1 Classic. Do not mix it up with the very similar newer model, the Canon F1 New or F1n, how it is also called, which is a slightly newer and more sophisticated model of this camera. Not to say that the F1 Classic is a worse camera. I prefer the F1 Classic over the F1n as it is completely mechanically controlled and very robust and durable. The structure of the video is as follows. First, I will tell you what battery you can use and how to change the battery, what lenses the Canon F1 Classic takes, how all the buttons and dials on this camera function, how to load the film, how to look through the viewfinder to compose your image and get the correct exposure, how to focus, take a photo, and at the end rewind and unload your film. Let's start with the battery. The battery is a little problematic on the F1 Classic as it is designed specifically for use with so-called PX625 mercury batteries that are no longer in use. They have the same form factor as those Vata V625U, however, the mercury batteries had a little low voltage, so you should not use alkaline batteries like the Vata. A solution to this problem is using an active battery adapter together with a button cell like this one from Canto Camera, or my preferred solution, as it is much cheaper, is to use such a simple rubber ring together with a such a ThinkAir A675 hearing aid battery, which is much cheaper and will last you for at least 6 months. Do not forget that those batteries have to breathe out on the air for 5 minutes before you can use it, and then just use it together with this rubber ring. The rubber ring secures it in place and position it so that the plus side shows to the bottom of the camera like this. Put the screw back in and you're ready to go. There's also a battery check button which is located here, and the little arrow inside the viewfinder is showing you that the battery is working fine. Now, when it comes to the lenses, the F1 Classic can either use classic FD or FL lenses with breech lock mount, or such newer Canon NFD lenses like this 50mm 1.8, which I will use. To attach the lens, check that those two red dots are aligned and twist lock the lens with a light twist to the right until it is firmly in place. The lens itself, all the Canon FD lenses will have a aperture ring to adjust the aperture obviously, and a focus, as all those cameras and lenses are manual focus. Now let's check what all those buttons and dials are for. The camera itself is pretty simple and straightforward. The only thing that leaves some questions unanswered is this so-called multifunction dial. It has multiple purposes, the first one being to step down the aperture. This is especially useful if you're using lenses that won't communicate the aperture with the camera. This step down can also be locked by turning the lever down here to the L locked position. Now it stays in place. And it can also be used to lock the mirror of the camera in the up position, which is especially useful when using the camera for longer exposures on a tripod. You have a tripod mount here at the bottom. And the last function of this button is it's also a self-timer. When I twist it counterclockwise and release the shutter, it will start this self-timer, which will release the shutter at the top position. Now I'll put the lens back on, and you have a PC sync for use with cables. Unfortunately, the camera, as you can see here, does not have a hot shoe like the F1n does, but it's possible to use an accessory called the Flash Coupler L, which goes here to use the camera with flashes. This is the rewind lever, which you use to rewind the film. You can also open the door here. For this to happen, press this silver button and pull up the rewind lever. Then you have your dial for the activation of the light meter. Now it's on off. You can also use it to check the battery, see, or turn it on. In the viewfinder you will find some information for the exposure, which I'll show you later on. Then you have your shutter speed dial with speeds up to 1/2000th of a second, which is pretty fast for such an old camera. It also doubles as an ISO dial. To set the ISO, just pull up this little collar around the shutter speed dial and set the ISO accordingly. The shutter button is here, and it also has an integrated locking mechanism to prevent accidental exposures. And the rewind lever is on the far right side. Now let's load some film. To load the film, open up the back door. I already have some film in here, so let me rewind it just to show you how to load it again. Now I can remove it once again. This is a 200 ISO film. Before loading the film, it's always a good procedure to set the ISO, because you can forget it afterwards. Now, pulling up the collar of the shutter speed dial and set it to 200 as the film tells me. Now the camera's light meter will know how sensitive this film is to light. Open the back door. Now is also a good time to check the light seals of the camera, which are located here at the back door hinge and alongside the grooves of the back side of the body here and here. On this camera we haven't replaced them, and you should expect to change the light seals on almost any vintage camera you buy online. We also sell pre-cut light seal kits in our online shop, and we have a YouTube video online that shows the process in detail if you're interested in supporting our store. Now, finally, let's load the film. Pull up the rewind knob, put inside the film, twist it a little until it sits into place. Pull the film above the shutter, be careful not to touch the shutter plane, and slide the film leader into the slit of the take-up spool, like this. Now hold it down with one of your thumbs while slowly and carefully advancing the film 2 times. Release the shutter, advance again. Seems like it's properly loaded. Close the back door, release the shutter and advance 2 more times. Now, to be sure that you've loaded the film properly, you can also check if this rewind knob is rotating, which it does. Now I know the film is properly loaded, and the film counter here is showing 0, which means that I can now start shooting. It will go up to 36 exposures depending on how long your film is. Now let me show you how to adjust the exposure of the camera. On the right side you can see a little indicator window that is showing you what exposure value to set based on the ISO that we already set to 200, the shutter speed and the aperture. The little arrow or needle shows what shutter speed I set. Now it is set to 250, as you also can see in this little window in the bottom right corner. Now I set it to 1/1000th of a second, etc. And while I set it, this little needle moves. If I decide that I want to shoot at 1/125, which is a good overall exposure for everyday shooting, I need to adjust the aperture accordingly. To do so, I turn the aperture dial so long as the needle and the circle match up. Now I've set the aperture to f8, which you can't see, but I did it, and now I know that with this ISO 200 film at a shutter speed of 1/125 seconds, I need an aperture of f8 to get correct exposure. That's it. Pretty straightforward. Now, you also have a focus indicator. It's a so-called split screen prism. If I turn the focus ring, you see the image changes. And I need to turn the focus so long as that the whole image becomes in focus, and as a confirmation I need to check this little split screen prism in the middle, the little circle, and when the two half parts of the circle, or the lines that go through those two parts of the circle, align like they do here, I know that this hole in the wall that I'm focusing now is indeed in focus. Okay, now when you know how to set the aperture, the shutter speed and ISO, you can go on and shoot your film. In order to do so, press the shutter button, advance, focus, set your exposure values, press the shutter, and so on until all of your exposures are gone. When you're finished with the film, meaning when you reached the 36th frame, the film won't advance anymore, then you know that it's time to re-spool the film back into the canister. I can turn off the light meter to preserve battery life. Now I need to unlock the rewind by pressing this little button at the bottom of the camera. Pull up this little lever. It shows me the direction that I need to turn it in order to re-spool the film back into the canister. Turn it clockwise until you don't feel any resistance anymore, like now. Open up the back door by pulling up the lever and remove the film from the camera. Now you can drop it off at your favorite lab or send it to an online lab. That's it. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions left, please leave me a comment at the comment section below. Other than that, see you next time around. Bye.